investors, started his own firm a couple of years back, and without a doubt, again not trying to market him because he's a good friend of mine, one of the best brand names that we can think of in India. And if I really remember correct, his tagline is value for progress or something like that. Yeah. So I think whatever it is what their company represent about. Now, without standing in between him and myself, let me give you a very quick formal introduction of him. Anuj Sonpal is a founder and CEO of Velaram Advisors, India's foremost IR management service company, no doubt about it. After completing his college education in finance in New York, he worked in New York for 10 years and came back, unlike we would like to dream to go back and go there. Worked in companies like Ernst & Young, PepsiCo, was with Goldman Sachs across various financial roles like business consulting, corporate finance, strategic planning, and banking. After 8 years, Velaram is one of the largest IR management service companies in India with a proven track record of value-added work for various corporate clients. And I'm sure he's going to be a good aggregator for us. Over to you, Anuj.
Thanks, Bala. That was quite humbling when your guru in investor relation actually called you a role model. So that's really nice of you. Vikashi, you've left me some big shoes to fill. My presentation is definitely not as interactive. So I'll try to be quick. We have to break for lunch. I know Rohan is looking at me from his side of his eye. Ladies and gentlemen, so when I got an opportunity to present today, I took a topic that obviously is very near and dear to me, and one where I have some level of experience, definitely not as much as all the veterans combined in this audiences. And also one of the reasons why I picked this topic was, even in the last event, which was the IR Magazine Awards, we actually sponsored that event, and we got a lot of questions, and probably for the fun of it, I think some people have the misconception that investor relation agencies are probably here to take away your jobs. Please let me leave that rest assured that there is no way an investor relation agency can replace the investor relation internal investor relation function. But I do believe that investor relation, an effective investor relation agency can definitely bridge the gap that lies in the investor relation program. So moving on very quickly, let me just let me just quickly take you through this presentation as to our thought process, and hopefully it adds some value. So very simply, the IR program, most of the audience today is investor relation managers from good large companies. So obviously there is an investor relation program, but I think Pradeep said it very well that less than 5% of less than 300 companies in India actually have an investor relation team, whether internal or external. And this number, it was astonishing when the IR Magazine hosted its first award, a couple of months back. The number is completely the opposite. 95% or so of mature countries have been doing investor relations, whether internally or externally, for the last 20-30 years. So it is a fairly new function for India. When I started about 8 or 9 years ago, we were one of the few organizations to start it in a very niche manner, but PR, like it's taken birth in most countries, financial PR has moved on to getting into investor relations. So very simply, I'm going to brush with this, but I think Bala also covered it quite same. But I want to actually add a point out here what Pankaj said. Investor relation is not only the process, but I truly believe it is definitely an art of communicating with the investor community to ultimately to create a better understanding, a fundamental understanding about the company's business processes, financials, fundamentals, the strategy, the growth prospects, ultimately which results into creating a fair value valuation for the company. The various tools that are used, which we go through also, is basically communications through presentations and annual reports and various other aspects. But one important point that actually Sandeep also mentioned in his first presentation is that with over 6,000 listed companies today, and when I started about 8 years back, there were about 4,000 listed companies in the primary Indian exchanges today. The competition for the attention of the investor as well as the analyst community is very high. Another major factor also that India, and I love saying this, especially in my pitch meetings to corporate clients, is that although we are one of the most overbroked countries in the world, which is more than 2,000 brokerage licenses, the fact of the matter is we are one of the most under-researched countries in the world, with less than about 350 actual active stocks under coverage. So this obviously creates a huge gap for investors to actually get the insights into companies that definitely internal or external investor relations agencies can bridge. Moving on, the broader IR program goals. This is standard across most companies. Shareholding, maintaining relationships with existing investors, identifying, meeting prospective investors, increasing research coverage, improving the quality of research coverage, communications, creating very effective, impactful communication material, increasing the visibility, increasing the fundamental understanding, which is one of the major gaps across buy-side, sell-side analysts. They claim to know it, but to a large extent, they actually don't. Increasing awareness about the company and its performance, perception, presenting investor feedback. The IR magazine for years in and years out has actually put this on the #1 rating mechanism by leading senior managements of companies on determining the effectiveness of investor relation programs, which is actually getting candid feedback and so that they can take strategic decisions for the company. Ultimately achieving fair valuation, also widening the shareholding base and basically improving the liquidity. Various mechanisms of metrics of actually measuring the effectiveness of IR programs. Quantitatively, the number of meetings being done, one-on-one calls, phone calls, emails, contacts with potential new shareholders, sell-side analyst coverage, participants on analyst days. I think Vikash also mentioned that at the end of the day, the management obviously believes the IR is actually a function which I kind of like to say is a thankless job in a lot of ways, because the outcome is not just the share value, because there's a lot of hard work that goes into actually bringing investors, maintaining investors, creating research report. For us, actually, that's the pride in actually it's actually once you start getting investors into the company through your fundamental understanding and attracting that actually becomes like a high that you kind of want to do that again and again and again, which is in this business. The other matrices that are used by managements, obviously, valuation and stock price is something that they always think about. But again, as I mentioned, feedback is very critical. The ability to develop new relationships, the quality of coverage, one of the very important parts is also how well is the management, the boards, the strategy of the company registering with the investor community. The buy side and the sell side community also rate or measure the effectiveness of IRs through various aspects like disclosure standards, transparency, company knowledge of the IRO, responsiveness, proactivity, corporate access. So let me take you to the IR team. As I said, the idea of this presentation is bridging that gap. 90% or 95% of India's publicly listed companies don't even have an investor relation program, let alone be an internal or an external. So the fact remains that the gap is the entire function doesn't exist. Creating a good blend of the team. Many of you guys are from internal investor relations. Many companies, typically the trend tends to be that larger companies start hiring internal investor relation officers, smaller mid-cap companies start hiring external. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at it globally, I was working in Goldman Sachs. and they have an entire KP or desk sitting out of Bangalore that doesn't do anything other than investor relations. So it is a team of hundreds of probably investor relation people, financial analysts who are on a call helpline that are responsible for talking to retail investors. So obviously there is a use of internal and external which goes into the partially outsourced or supporting function. We today are managing investor relations for more than 50 companies. About, I would say, maybe 20-30% of them have internal investor relations teams already in place. And I would say maybe a 5% of them use us as just a support to better or complement their existing investor relation program. What are the pros and cons in terms of using an external IR agency? A, they're definitely cost effective. They're scalable as the company grows. You can keep adding team members, improving the efficiencies. The network of contacts and the relationship built by investor relation teams is typically wider because we typically manage a lot of companies and you always meet more and more, and then you have the ability to cross-sell, if that's the word I can use. The wider experience, I think one of the key reasons why I love my job is that over the years managing more than 50 companies, the knowledge and the experience that you get not only from looking at one company but then looking at the second and trying to add value from the learnings of that to the second, to the third, to the fourth, and then going to 50, it's been the most truly rewarding experience of it all. Specialized expertise, most effective investor relation companies now have internal creative departments, editorial teams, design teams. So definitely the resource flexibility is far more. Objectivity, a very important point. To looking at your company from a third-party perspective, a lot of you have been within your companies for a long period of time, probably evolved into the investor relation function. Having that feedback or objectivity from a third party definitely helps in the investor relations, because you have to look at it from the investor or the outside point of view also. Reduced bandwidth of internal resources, including the investor relation team. The cons, the time lag in information dissemination obviously comes through ladders. Concerns on leakage of sensitive information. You have to have your NDAs very strong and make sure that the investor relation agency, has internal controls to de-risk this. The shared resources across clients and the lack of control, and also the difficulty to track quality. Moving on, idea is bridging the gaps, whether you have an internal or an external. Again, going back to the goals, a lot of gaps, and I believe that if you look at this page, I'm sure that most of you can say that there are definitely many of these gaps that you probably can address to, whether it is the lack of good number of research reports, or the quality of research reports, or maybe a concentrated domestic holding and the lack of foreign institutional holding, whether it was communication, you put all the information out there, but it just doesn't have the impact or the effectiveness that you wanted to have. The lack of awareness or fundamental understanding. I've seen a lot of managements and investor relation officers get really annoyed at analysts because they just don't do their homework. And when they meet, they just ask the basic questions, and it can definitely become a daunting job when you have to start from scratch as to how the industry works. Perception, dealing with negative perceptions, concerns, misconceptions, and most importantly, getting the candid feedback, which a lot of investors, many a times we realize that sometimes the analyst community shies away from giving that candid feedback to the management. They want to keep the relationship with you. They want to use you for roadshows. They want to use you for something or the other. They don't know where they're going to need you next. As a peer-to-peer and an investor relation agency can definitely add value there. And ultimately, low valuation, liquidity being a problem. So IR, through various unique and effective in external IR agency through various unique ways, can definitely address these gaps if your internal IR is there. And I want to just quickly take you through this. So one of them, if you were to take shareholding, and visibility and liquidity. One of the ways that enhancing the internal investor relation program is through leveraging the relationship network of IR agencies. With managing 50 different companies across different sectors, the number of investor as well as brokerage house connects that a company like we have today is in the brokerage house more than what, close to 900 brokerage houses that we are in touch with on a day-to-day basis. In terms of investor holding, institutional investors, more than close to 1,800 institutional investors. The fact of the matter is, all these are guys actively looking at all kinds of stocks, all kinds of sectors across this thing. So you can definitely leverage out of this relationship network. Tracking, we usually have a database and we keep updating this. Tracking emerging and new institutional investors, new brokerage houses, and as they come in, they go out, and there's a lot of worth of new ones out there. The knowledge of investor preferences and the fund objectives, targeted approach of proactive meetings, organizing, managing, enhancing the quality of participation for events like non-deal roadshows. We have the ability to go and make sure that you get the maximum participation. Relationship with more brokerage houses, so you can we have the ability to kind of cross-sell and kind of broker saying, how's that you have a conference with 100 companies, we have here 50 companies, let me make your job easier. Okay, you don't want to invite the 50, at least invite the 10, 15, 20, and it's a conference that you want to go. Ultimately, getting that invitation is also important. Then, at the end of the day, prioritizing the management's bandwidth, strategic planning with best partners for conducting non-deal roadshows, making sure that they are behind it, not just giving the sales job and getting you just just enough. Increasing the corporate access for diverse investor community and utilizing us to engage with smaller investors. I think Sandeep, I asked that question to Sandeep, and I think it's a very important point. Today, you don't know who's small, who's big, and who is small today and going to become big. We're seeing the birth of new funds or fund managers coming in from like Sunil Singhanias of the world and Kenneth Andrews of the world, and they've grown funds within a matter of no time that are as good as some of the smaller mutual funds. So you can't ignore small investors. One of the very important factors that an IR agency, especially where we have also kind of worked this out and have added real value to a lot of our companies, is creating a pull factor rather than push factor. Another question I asked in the first presentation to Sandeep also was that how do you reach out? Because typically as a company, whether investor relations team or just the management, that there is a fund out there. They have they have interest in your company, but they've just not met you, they've not even looked at you. How do you attract them rather than looking desperate and picking up your phone saying that, listen, why the hell haven't you looked at my company? You should be investing in my company. Here's where we can play a very effective role. As Valorem Advisors, we have a very unique approach of proactively going and meeting with the investor community and creating a fundamental understanding of the company. The simple logic we tell them is that just understand the company. Whether you're a buy side or a sell side, just understand the company from us. Whether you like it or don't like it, at the end of the day, big deal. I'll waste half an hour of your time, 1 hour of your time, 2 hours of your time, whatever you want to do. In this way, what we are actually doing is that time that he would have to go and do the research on the company, we're just giving him a crash course. So we're just kind of tutoring him on the company. We're not sector analysts, we're just the company analysts. And who did we learn it from? This is a horse's mouth, you guys, all the managements of the company. And this is the activity that they've started really appreciating because we just make their life easy. And after that, they got in a better informed decision to actually, when they come and meet the management, they can actually ask strategic questions. They also look like they've done their homework. Apart from that, positioning the company as a peer-to-peer analyst, sometimes they're candid enough to us and consider us as their peer if we are effective with them. As a company, you may have to kind of act as a company and have a certain level of distance or ego. Getting candid, negative perception and actually dealing with them. Again, as I mentioned, that as a company, as an investor, they might just shy away from telling the truth. They might, just make the reason up saying that, oh, I can't cover because of market capitalization criteria, or I can't cover because of sector, or we're not looking at this industry. But at the end of the day, and they know that that's just another lie. Objectively convincing without sounding transactional, building and maintaining cordial relationships with analysts. Ultimately, ego management. We've seen a lot of our senior management getting very irritated with But it's our job to kind of massage them and actually make them feel that they're important. And we do that very well because we not only deal with them one company, but we have to deal with them with multiple companies. Performing regular follow-ups. This is something that, as a company, you may shy away from calling him up saying, what happened? You met with me, it was a fantastic meeting, but nothing came out of it. Here we call them up saying, what's up? You've looked at this, now look at that, but what happened with that? And we keep on following up with every month till the desired outcome is actually achieved. And a lot of times we see a lot of success with that. Getting investor feedback and perception management. As I said, this is the number one mechanism or metrics used by senior management. I know Rohan is breathing down my neck, so I'll try to be quick about this. But basically getting the candid feedback, as I also already mentioned, conducting perception management studies and giving those unbiased market intelligence, because as managing different companies, you get associated with a lot of participants, small, big, various different analysts, fund managers, and you kind of start hearing things about companies and about sectors and all the kind of things. But this knowledge and giving that intelligence to the management, the internal IR, is something that investor relations can definitely bridge the gap with as well. Surveillance of social media, providing recommendations based on the feedbacks on strategic decisions to be made, addressing the negative feedbacks in a strategic manner, assisting in taking rumors is something that investor relations are. Collateral development, I think, without going into very detail, we see a lot of land presentations. We've now seen a lot of companies coming to us and actually using our help to actually deep dive into understanding their strategy, understanding their thought process, and putting across that well so that the investor community appreciates. Again, this is about bridging the gap, where the gap is of the investor community not understanding the company, and actually addressing that and in a more effective manner. We play a lot of importance in design. Every presentation looking the same. Vikash did a fantastic presentation, and I think it was the cartoons that actually made us all awake again. And I'm sure by the end of this you all will be sleeping, but it definitely helps. There's a lot of changing environment in terms of industry standards and communication standards globally. In India, we are all doing a fantastic job, but there's a lot to learn and a lot to improve consistently. Presentation tailored as per the sector being covered. Next and lastly, I would also like to talk about the analytical report, something that Pradeep touched upon as well. What we do is we leverage, a lot of companies don't have probably the budgets of these. The fact of the matter is we leverage different instruments, whether it's Bloomberg or Ipreo, and kind of aggregate the cost across various clients, which ultimately makes it more cost effective. But one of the most important things that we also do over here is we kind of make it customized to you. So at the end of the day, the management, instead of having to look at different databases, is having one report which he wants at the end of the day and looks at it and say that this is what I wanted. Some interesting things like profiling of investors. Who are they meeting? What is the background? What is the kind of sectors he's invested in? What is his fund's background? We've never heard of him. Giving him a sheet, just basically giving him his, and that comes from different databases, and we collate that and put it together. One of the very most important things that we actually do very interestingly for our client companies is a lot of peer group and sector analysis. We listen into our con calls of our peer groups, of our client companies, understand and get the key highlights, get those knowledge and get that inputs, put it in a very systematic and easy to read format, kind of a one-pager, give it to our managements, and say this is what happened in their con call. Whether it's the con call or the transcript, it's just insights into what is happening, and senior managements really appreciate this. A lot of other stuff like social media surveillance and various other analytical tools that we use, which I'm happy to discuss, but I think it is time for lunch. Ultimately, investor relation agencies, to conclude, can help bridge the gap. If the investor relation program is non-existent, as an external agency, we can completely manage. But more importantly, with internal IR agencies, as time grows, there is a lot we can do. At the end of the day, act as an extended arm of the company. It would result into significant time savings and ultimately improve visibility and also higher return to shareholders. So with that, I know we've run out of time, so I'm happy to take some questions.